if you like, her favourite son, Andrew?
Well, as I look at in the book, there is this common sort of parlance. People say he was her favourite, and it wasn't quite like that. As I discovered talking to people very close to her, it wasn't so much he was a favourite. He was the one she was really worried about. It wasn't so much favouritism as concern. She could see he was vulnerable. He was a pretty lost soul. He came out of the Navy in 2001. She and her staff tried to get the Navy to keep him on in some capacity, and they'd finally run out of road and said, look, there really is nothing for him to do.
Did she feel sorry for her own son?
I think she did feel sorry for him at times. Yeah, I mean, I think she was exhausted.
A new royal biography is arriving with the kind of disclosure that doesn't fade after a news cycle. Inside its pages is an account of Prince Andrew physically striking one of the most decorated senior officials in the entire palace household. The incident was serious enough that a retired Prince Philip broke from his private withdrawal to compose a personal apology letter. It was serious enough that the Lord Chamberlain confronted Andrew face to face. And when the Queen herself was finally told the truth, after staff had actively tried to conceal it from her, her response was not fury, it was not disbelief, it was 4 words: quiet, measured, and somehow more devastating than any outburst could have been. The book is titled Elizabeth II, in Private and in Public, written by royal biographer Robert Hardman, and it is scheduled for release on April 9, 2026, timed deliberately to honor what would have been Queen Elizabeth II's 100th birthday. What did she know about her second son, and for how long had she known it? Robert Hardman is not a tabloid commentator. He is among the most respected and credentialed royal biographers working today, with a documented history of access to sources operating at the highest levels of the palace. His new work drew directly from insiders, senior household members, officials, and individuals with first-hand proximity to events that never reached the public domain. Before the book's official launch, the Daily Mail published serialized excerpts. Within hours, those excerpts had consumed the national conversation in Britain and spread rapidly across international media. One revelation above all others pulled every major outlet into its orbit. And the timing of this publication is not incidental. Released just days before April 21, 2026, what would have marked the late Queen's centenary, Hardman's book arrives as both tribute and reckoning. To understand the full weight of what Hardman has documented, it is essential to understand exactly who was on the receiving end of Prince Andrew's conduct. Vice Admiral Sir Tony Johnstone-Bett served as Master of the Household, one of the most consequential operational roles within the royal residence. His biography reads not as a bureaucratic appointment, but as a distinguished military career accumulated over decades. He was a Royal Navy veteran, a trained helicopter pilot who flew missions during the Falklands conflict, the former commanding officer of HMS Ocean, the former head of Joint Helicopter Command. These were not honorary titles, they were earned credentials carrying immense weight within both military and royal circles. His reputation was, by every account available, entirely unimpeachable. In his role as Master of the Household, Sir Tony oversaw a division that, according to Hardman's research, employed more palace staff than any other department. He was not peripheral to the institution. He was central to its daily function. What makes this even more striking is that Andrew and Sir Tony were not strangers. They shared the singular experience of having both piloted helicopters during the Falklands campaign. So what could possibly have driven Andrew to turn on a man like this? The origin of the confrontation was, by any measure, completely unremarkable. Andrew wished to organize a pitch at Palace event at Buckingham Palace, a program he had established in 2014, promoted as a networking platform connecting technology entrepreneurs with prospective investors. The complication was institutional and straightforward. There were no available venues. A senior palace official relayed the sequence of events directly to Hardman, and the account is precise. In their own words, it was a routine household matter. The Duke wanted to have a reception in there, wasn't any room, it was as simple as that. Tony said he'd have to wait his turn like anybody else. Andrew did not accept that answer. What followed was not a heated verbal exchange, it was not a sharp word and a slammed door. According to the same account, the Duke went for him. Hardman documents that what transpired in those moments was, and here he quotes a member of staff directly, not just an outburst of expletives and a jab of a finger, but what one member of staff described as a kinetic blow. Staff in the immediate vicinity reportedly froze. The atmosphere in that space shifted entirely. Even among those accustomed to Andrew's volatility, what they witnessed caused genuine astonishment. During a subsequent appearance on GB News, Hardman described it without equivocation, pushing, punching, directed at someone he called a very distinguished, much-liked, much-trusted, very senior royal aide. The palace could not pretend this had not happened. Sir Tony Johnstone-Bett escalated the matter through the appropriate channel, bringing it to the Lord Chamberlain, Lord Peel. Lord Peel did not treat it lightly. He arranged a direct meeting with Andrew and delivered a confrontation that was unambiguous in its message. "I've been told you've been treating members of the household in a wholly inappropriate way. It's got to stop. What Andrew did next is perhaps the most psychologically revealing moment in the entire episode. He did not reach out to apologize. He did not express regret. He telephoned Lord Peel and, according to Hardman's account, opened with, "I gather you've been calling and causing problems." That phrasing is worth sitting with for a moment. In Andrew's framing, the Lord Chamberlain, who had received a formal complaint about a physical altercation, was the source of disruption. Andrew had positioned himself not as the individual who struck a senior official, but as the wronged party navigating an unfair interference. Prince Philip, who had by that point withdrawn from official royal engagements and retreated into private life, took the extraordinary step of personally composing a formal written apology to Sir Tony. The gesture came from a man who had specifically removed himself from palace obligations, and yet he found this situation grave enough to re-engage. Andrew was also guided toward producing an apology of his own. A palace staff member who reviewed it told Hardman it read as a sorry not sorry letter. And through all of it, there was one person whom everyone around Andrew was working carefully to protect from the full truth. Palace staff made a deliberate effort to keep the incident from reaching Queen Elizabeth. A senior member of the household, Hardman reports, actively attempted to downplay the matter to, in the words used directly, spare her blushes. The effort ultimately failed, the Queen was told. And when she received the full account of what her son had done to one of the most honored members of her household, her response arrived without raised voice, without visible distress, without a moment of performative disbelief. 4 words, "I know what he is like." That is the entirety of it. 4 words containing not a single syllable of surprise, no shock, no fury directed outward, not even a question. Just the quiet, settled weight of long-held knowledge being confirmed once more. In the months that followed, Sir Tony Johnstone-Bet was awarded a knighthood. Hardman and those observing the situation closely interpreted this not as coincidence, but as the Queen's own understated form of adjudication, her wordless signal about precisely who in that exchange had conducted himself with honor. What Hardman has constructed in this book is not a takedown. That distinction matters enormously when reading these passages. The portrait that emerges is not one of scandal, it is one of sorrow. The Queen did not regard Andrew as a problem to be managed. She regarded him as her vulnerable child. He arrived a full decade after Princess Anne's birth, frequently described as the beginning of her second set of children, and that positioning within the family shaped how she saw him throughout his life. A veteran household member shared their observation with Hardman plainly. She was always worried about him, seeing him as vulnerable and feeling he'd been manipulated by bad people. There is a personal detail in the book that has drawn particular attention since the excerpts were published. Andrew reportedly abstained completely from alcohol, his preference being room temperature water exclusively. When someone close to him once asked why, he allegedly replied, "I tasted it once when I was a teenager and I didn't like it." The acquaintance recounting this to Hardman added, "That's why the Queen would always worry about him." There is something in that detail, the literalness, the arrested logic of it, that suggests a personality that never fully outgrew certain early frameworks. By 2011, even the Royal Navy had reached the limits of what it could do. They had tried to retain Andrew Hardman documents. He genuinely possessed skill as a helicopter pilot, but their message to the palace was blunt. "Look, there's nothing we can do." A mother who loved him regardless. An institution that eventually ran out of options. The Johnstone-Bet episode was not an aberration that sat alone in an otherwise unremarkable record. On GB News, Hardman was direct. "The more stories I heard about Andrew's behavior, whether you talk to Lord Luton, whether you talk to ambassadors, whoever it is, everyone would have an eye-rolling Andrew story." The accumulation was not limited to palace insiders. Former Prime Minister David Cameron removed Andrew from his position as UK trade envoy in 2011 and relayed to Hardman that Andrew was simply a liability in that role, adding that every other member of the family understood the parameters of their position. They knew what they were expected to do. They understood the line they were not to cross. Lord Peel's characterization was the most direct of all. Andrew, he said, carried an overriding belief that he was better than the rest of us, and that entitlement was not situational. It shaped virtually every interaction he had. Hardman's final assessment of how the Queen navigated her son's conduct is carefully worded but unsparing. Her indulgence of Andrew, he concludes, belongs on the relatively short list of decisions she did not get right. He is measured about this. He notes she got far more right than wrong, but the inclusion matters. A source speaking to Hello magazine offered another detail that contextualizes everything. The process of drafting Andrew's resignation letter from royal duties in 2019, following his catastrophic BBC Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis, was described as one of her lowest moments as a mother and as a monarch. Hardman's publication date of April 9, 2026 sits less than 2 weeks before what would have been Queen Elizabeth II's 100th birthday on April 21st. That proximity is not incidental. It places these revelations directly against the backdrop of a monarchy that has, since her passing, done what she never did: confronted Andrew's conduct with institutional consequence. The reality in which this book has arrived is one the late Queen never witnessed. In October 2025, King Charles formally stripped Andrew of his princely status and ducal rank. In February 2026, Andrew was arrested under suspicion of misconduct in public office. On April 5, 2026, Easter Sunday, he was absent from the royal gathering at St. George's Chapel. His daughters did not attend either, their absence arranged directly with the king. Each of these developments would have been virtually unimaginable during his mother's reign. The story that began with a physical altercation over an event space and crystallized in 4 quiet words has expanded into something far beyond what anyone in that palace corridor could have anticipated. Robert Hardman's book does not make the comfortable argument that Queen Elizabeth turned a blind eye to her son's conduct. It makes a harder one. She saw him clearly. She understood with full awareness precisely what he was capable of. "I know what he is like," those words confirm it. And yet she shielded him again and again, not from ignorance but from love. That distinction is the quiet tragedy at the center of this entire story. It is the difference between a failure of perception and a failure of will, and Hardman argues gently but plainly that it was the latter. A mother who looked directly at her son's worst qualities, recognized them without flinching, and chose protection over correction. A son who, to all available evidence, never grasped the full weight of what that devotion cost her. Whether that makes her culpable or simply human is a question this book leaves deliberately open, and it is worth asking.